Some of you may know I volunteer at a museum, and yesterday a woman came into where I work and she made a comment of how nice this museum was. And so I asked her what had brought her in, and she said she was only in the town for about a day because she was an author of young adult books and she was doing a book event at a local bookstore. So we had a nice little chat and about the artifacts, whatever. And after she had left, I went to look her up, and of course I decided I'm gonna go to this event. So I went, and it turned out to be Elizabeth Wien, and she was talking about her new book, Stateless, and some of the rabbit holes of information that she went down while researching for the book. And her talk was so funny and so informative on completely irrelevant things. I loved it. And it was just a really awesome opportunity. So I had actually never heard of Elizabeth Wien before, but I'm very excited to read my new signed copy of Stateless and tell you guys all about it. So I have finished Stateless, so let's get into it. Stateless is a murder mystery set in 1937, 2 years before World War II starts. Hitler is already in control of Germany, and the forces that are in play during World War II are already in motion. Amidst all this turmoil of fascism, Nazis, war in Spain, we see an English female pilot, Lady Frith, who organizes an airplane race to promote peace in Europe called the Olympics of the Air. It's for the young people of Europe to compete in. 12 contestants join, each from different countries, and Stella North, our narrator, is the only female pilot in this race and is also the pilot racing for Britain. One of the pilots is killed the first day of the race, so Stella and the other pilots are on edge while they try to figure out who the murderer is and why the murderer is after them. Is it just cutthroat competition, or is it something more? Some overall things I liked right off the bat. There is a map in the beginning of the book with the course that the racers take, right here. So they go all the way around Europe. And the other thing in the front of the book is a list of all the pilots and their chaperones, along with their ages, their airplane model, and what country they were flying for. So this was really handy to have, especially in the beginning, when I hadn't quite sorted out the characters in my mind yet, and I could just refer back to that. Another thing that I loved is the descriptions while flying. The first person POV was, I think, really, really good for this. Every time Stella was looking down from her plane, I felt like I was seeing and doing all the same things as she was. When Stella is over Stonehenge, I can see it from 500 feet up with the afternoon sun on it. When the plane does a loop, I feel the exhilaration of being upside down in an open cockpit of the plane. Really, every single time that I got to experience these surroundings when Stella was flying, it felt very firsthand and real, so it was excellently done. The rest of the video, I will say, is going to be on characters. I tried to keep out all the major spoilers, but be aware there may be a few small ones, so just know that going forward. First up, of course, is Stella North, our main character. In the beginning, I was a little unsure of Stella, whether or not I liked her, because she's a very angry character. She often speaks with anger and is frustrated with people around her, whether they're reporters or the pilots or chaperones who aren't really taking her seriously. And while these things do make a lot of sense for her character being a young woman in kind of a pioneer position of flying, they aren't characteristics that necessarily endear her to me as a reader. However, don't worry, she got so good. I loved her by the end. She had many good attributes. Starting small, Stella has an egg collection, a bird's egg collection, and this seems irrelevant, but it was really just another facet of her that I loved seeing. That she's more than just a girl who likes flying airplanes. She's a girl who likes birds and science, and she works at a museum, and she has her own egg collection, and I just loved seeing that and kind of seeing how it fleshed her out a bit more. Besides Stella's love for birds, though, there are two big characteristics that I want to touch on. The first is her bravery. Now, reading through the first time, I don't think I really would have said she was especially brave, but going back and rereading parts, taking notes, I saw it more. And I think the reason it's kind of hard to see is that it's not one big moment, one big choice where Stella saves the world or saves the pilots with her bravery. It's really just lots of small moments, small choices where she consistently does the hard thing, does the scary thing, even though she doesn't want to. You know, part of the race is over the Alps, and Stella's scared to fly over the Alps because she hasn't had much training over high mountains. But she still does it, and she survives. And another time, her friends are in a dangerous situation, and without hesitation, Stella helps them, even though the consequences might be really bad for her if she got caught. Again and again, Stella is put into situations which require, quick thinking and a calm mind, and she just does whatever needs to be done, no matter how hard, no matter how scary. I think she sums it up pretty nicely, actually, when she says, "Our choices matter." And it did a very good job of showing how she consistently made those good choices, even though they were hard. The second trait I admired in Stella was her initiative. This kind of actually builds off of the first point. There is a part in the book where one pilot needs to get a document from another, and it can't be seen. No one can see them doing it. And so Stella realizes that she is the only one who can actually make this happen. And so she kind of, right on the spot, comes up with this idea to use a coffee pot as like a diversion and also to hide the document. And so using this ruse, she manages to get and transfer the document. At another point, it becomes clear that the Chaperones really aren't taking seriously the claims of murder, that the pilot who died, it might have been a murder. So Stella takes matters into her own hands by going to the press, and by using them, she makes it such a big deal that it really can't be ignored. So by the end of the book, I definitely was a fan of Stella. Speaking of fans of Stella, let's talk about Tony and Sebastian, the pilots for France and Germany, respectively. Tony is an angry cinnamon roll. I love him. He's always hiding something, though. There's always something that we don't know. But as the story goes on, we get to see more and more of his backstory. Long story short, he needs therapy. But I found a couple things that I really liked about Tony. And the first is that he is very genuine. He hides a lot of his past, of course. But multiple times when he's speaking with Stella, she notes that what seems to be something, like that he would be doing to impress or flirt, it really isn't that for that reason. He's genuinely loves flying, or he truly wants to get to know her better. And he's very blunt when he speaks, but I think he kind of expects that honesty from other people in return. When Stella comes to him with sensitive information about the death of the pilot, he immediately trusts her. And in return, she ends up telling him more than what she had told to the Chaperones because she trusts him. Now, this next point, I just found it funny. Tony, multiple times, finds an old lady, starts speaking in German to her, and then just immediately becomes friends with her. And this happened twice with two different old women. Like, honestly, he's an icon. Moving on to Sebastian. If I had to describe Sebastian in one word, I would say honorable. He takes great pride in his country and his job as a Luftwaffe pilot, but he isn't really what I would call prideful. When confronted with accusations about Germany, he believes they're untrue and is appropriately offended. However, when he learns that they are true and Germany hasn't really been giving him the full story, he graciously and quickly accepts the truth. Overall, Sebastian was probably my favorite character. He's loyal, friendly, and a great pilot. The next two pilots, I'm not going to go into depth about them, but I really loved them, so they get an honorable mention. Erland and Pim are the Norwegian and Dutch pilots. They're so funny. Pim is a troll. I mean, I did not expect it from him. And Erland is just such a little ball of sunshine. Every time they came into the story, I knew something good was going to happen. Lastly, the Chaperones. Now, there are 4 Chaperones, but I'm only going to talk about 3 because the Italian chaperone wasn't a huge part of the story. First, the organizer of the race, Lady Frith. She has excellent fashion. Every scene, she's in a great gown. she was hesitant to believe the accusations of murder among the pilots, and that made me kind of dislike her, but she was very supportive and generous towards the pilots and, you know, these kids that she was protecting. Capitaine Basile was the French chaperone, and he was the character that I knew I could trust basically throughout the entire book. He doesn't have very much screen time, but he's a very interesting character, and in the author's note, Elizabeth Wein talks about the real-life historical figure he was based on, and if you have a chance, read about him, because he also was very fascinating. Lastly, Major Rosengart. Sometimes I liked him and sometimes I didn't. He, one moment, would say something that was kind of suspicious, and then the next moment he was, you know, a good, protective, steadfast leader, and I really liked that side of him. But his character was especially interesting to follow because he was a German fighter pilot in World War I. So that kind of brought tension in because the other three chaperones are from Allied countries, England, France, and Italy. And that kind of goes into my last point, is this book is just drenched in history, not in just our history, but the characters' history. There's memories and tensions from World War I, along with experiences from the pilots' childhoods, and even more recent years that are still affecting both the race and the murder investigation. Even the race as a whole is a reminder for peace to avoid scars like those that came from World War I. I think this just gave another level to the story, an undercurrent of broken pasts, but also the hope for peace and healing in the future. Overall, I would rate Stateless 4 out of 5 stars. It was a gripping read. The characters were lovable and fun to read about, and the way everything came together at the end, you know, the plot threads and the hints and the foreshadowing, it was very satisfying. When I finished the book, I honestly did not want to write this review. I just wanted to reread it. So go read Stateless. Thank you for watching.